And this is going on Instagram as well. All right, Diego, are we live currently?
Yes.
Okay, great. Hey, everybody. This is AJ Holmes here at the Negative Supply office. Saxon's going to be joining us here in just a moment. He and Diego are working out a few more little technical details behind the scenes. But I believe, let me get confirmation of this. Are we on Instagram and YouTube right now?
Not on Instagram.
Not yet, but we're about to be. Okay, great. So YouTube Live is up and going now. Obviously, if you're watching this or if you watch it later, but we will have an Instagram Live version rolling here in just a moment. The live today is just going to be our second weekly rendition of a Q&A about the Light Meter LM1 Kickstarter campaign. And yeah, 1 second, everybody. Saxon, there's an Arca head with a quick release plate on the shelf in my office. They need another quick release plate for the tripod, so we'll give them just a moment. If you have any other questions, obviously you can comment in on the live today. We'll be happy to try and answer those either as we go or at the end of the segment. And for those who have submitted questions or sent in messages the past several days, we really appreciate that. And if you haven't seen our Light Meter LM1 Kickstarter here in the past few days, it is over 300% funded. We've already really easily, we've been very surprised by how quickly we surpassed our first 3 stretch goals. And we do have another stretch goal announced now, so definitely take a look at that if you haven't. There's some pretty exciting features there. And also in the call today, we're going to be discussing in more detail the specifications of the LM1, as many of you have asked for. So give us just a minute or two more here while Saxon and Diego get a few things going. I'm going to make sure we have all the questions compiled and see if I need to put a few more in here, and we'll be right back in just a moment. All right, I think our team has pieced together a way to get us on Instagram as well. Maybe.
Give you audio for that too. No.
That's fine. It'll be fine.
2 things.
Nah. No.
On the table.
That table. Saxon, what about that table? Yeah, maybe. Thank you all for bearing with us during this trying few minutes. Is that coming together?
All right. I think we're live.
Great.
Officially live.
Well, Saxon, I've already given a couple of introductions. You can go ahead and give yours if you'd like.
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you guys so much. If you're following along with our campaign, it's been a very exciting week over the last couple of days. We've announced a couple stretch goals. We've surpassed a couple stretch goals. And we've actually launched quite a few new features that we're super excited about. We've got a couple plans through the end of the campaign. If you're following along, there's just 20 days left. With where we stand now, we feel really, really confident about the project. Almost every single day this week, I've actually sat down with really our team that's handling the electronics. That's been really the focus of our energy when it comes to making sure that this product launches successfully. It's been making sure those electronics and some of the programming needs are there. So I'm feeling great about it. That's a project update that I think you guys have probably already seen a little bit through some of the Kickstarter updates, but just wanted to echo it here. I think the big thing for us to cover today is some of the stuff we released yesterday, as well as a few questions. We're going to try to keep an eye on some of the YouTube questions that come in. So you may want to answer any of the YouTube questions. Instagram questions, we don't really have a great way to see them right now. Instagram is currently on the other phone, like it's on a phone to our side, and it's a little bit further away. But if you do have questions, please reach out to us. YouTube Live is probably the best place to add those questions currently.
Let me go ahead and add to Godfrey Di Giorgi. I hope I said that right. It's a beautiful name. This will be available later, just like our last YouTube Live was. And if you have questions that aren't answered here, feel free to send us an email or a message, and we'll be happy to answer that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I think you'll see the production value's gone up just a little bit. One of our teammates, Diego, was able to hook us up with a camera today that allows us to stream with a little bit more clarity. So when it does go live on YouTube, it'll look great. I guess let's dive right into it. I think we should start with maybe laying some of the groundwork for the update that we released yesterday, talk about Cine mode, our cinema mode, and then talk about why that's a stretch goal and why it's not something that we've already announced. As you guys may know, that we're building a device that's not only a light meter, but it's also got the capability to be somewhat of a handheld computer. It's got 3 different sensors on the inside that measure both light from an intensity standpoint, but it also can measure light from like an impulse standpoint, so we can read intervals. That sensor obviously is what we're using for our shutter speed tester, but it also has a color temperature reading that comes from an RGB sensor that gives us values that can be used for color temperature and possibly tint. When we realized that we were able to pack so many sensors into the LM1, we thought it would be a natural fit for us to actually start integrating new capabilities. We just didn't think the campaign would really be where it's at today as quickly as it was. Because of where we're at, because of the success of the campaign so far, we've already started talking a little bit about some of the things that we want to do next. The first one, the one that we started talking about, I think earliest, was a cinema mode. If you're a cinematographer, you know how important it is to have some of your exposure settings read to you in things like shutter angle and frames per second. And then even your aperture settings possibly in things like T-stops rather than f-stops. What's great about the LM1 is that it actually has a really powerful processor and it has those sensors in it to really translate that into other formats for people like cinematographers. It's just programming. The majority of the work that goes into that is really programming. We have a programming budget for the LM1 overall, and we have a programming budget for some of the existing stretch goals we've already met, like flash metering, like the shutter speed tester, like the filter factor compensation. What we need budget for is for the cinema mode. Quite frankly, it's going to take a couple more weeks worth of programming to add not just these additional settings, but to add it in a way that's very quick and easy to bounce back and forth between the modes on the device. And so that's exactly why we've launched it as a stretch goal. We know that additional budget will give us the resources to do so. If you've seen the Kickstarter update already, you've seen some screen renderings of this. These screen renderings have a couple things that I would actually take a look at just so you can get a feel for it. But it's got like a exposure compensation, almost like a dial or like a line, like a graph like you'd see on cameras. It's got a little bit more information packed into a smaller screen. This is some of the cinema specific information, and it has a little bit different layout, look, and feel. If you've seen our meters so far, we're using a default text on a default background, which isn't necessarily the best optimization. As soon as our Kickstarter reached a certain point, we started investing in some of the other things like the text and things like that. Because we're a little bit further from the camera today, it'll be a little harder for me to show you some of these things. But I've actually got one of the meters running a newer software version. This is kind of a YouTube Live and an Instagram Live exclusive. I'm going to try and show it to you. I'm not sure exactly how in focus it's going to be, but we'll see. Does it touch? Was it just going to try to guess? I think it's on face where. So.
Probably have to manually focus it.
Oh yeah, I can do that. I can manually focus. All right, guys. So you'll see that the text is a little bit different from our normal LM1. This particular device is running a newer software. As I mentioned, this new software allows us to pack more information on the screen using crisper text, honestly, for you on YouTube. You've already seen it for Instagram Live, giving you a little bit of a preview. Go watch the YouTube if you want the high-res footage of this, so you can kind of get a feel for it. Hopefully we jump back to being in focus.
It did.
Sweet. So yeah, that's a little bit of a taste of cinema mode. We're working with several cinematographers out there to really understand exactly what needs to come to that. We want to talk with you guys about some of your needs, though. We want to make sure that we're building a device with the right software that really fits that void, we think, in the industry for something that's pocketable for these type measurements. Anything to add as far as cinema mode?
Well, I mean, I would say filling a void in the industry for something that's pocketable, but also, relatively speaking, markedly more affordable, multiple times more affordable than many other options. And you hate to make it all about value and price, but we know that that's a very real consideration for most users, and it's a real consideration for us as well. So yeah, that's all I have to add.
Yeah, and just so you guys know, our target audience is people just like us. We definitely want to get this in the hands of some of the big folks out in Hollywood or in New York. Like, we want career cinematographers to use our devices, but we also know that this device might fit really well inside the bag for someone that does a lot of their own shooting, editing, directing, storyboarding. Hopefully, we're building a device that is perfect for those people that are starting YouTube, that are starting maybe film school, or starting some of these programs that require them to have a little bit more formality to their exposures. I think that was the big thing with cinema mode.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing that we posted yesterday in the Kickstarter update is actually the spec sheet. So AJ, we've gotten this question probably for the last week, at least once a day, about a full spec sheet.
Yeah, we definitely have.
The spec sheet is, it's something that it took us a few days to pull together. We had a lot of this information already on the back burner, ready to go, but we wanted to double check that each and every value that we were giving was still an accurate representation, given some of the changes that we've made. For example, adding flash metering, that we had to add a couple notes on that. But you'll see on the spec sheet things like aperture range, low end and high end, shutter speed range, low end and high end, ISO, low end and high end, EV, low end and high end. You'll see things like the battery connector. So those of you that are asking about it being a battery that's replaceable by the user, we've gone ahead and given you that information, so you would have, I guess, the ability to swap out the battery. It's definitely a concern that people have.
Saxon, it might actually be useful to actually run over these real quickly for people that haven't seen this.
Yeah, do you want to just read them all?
Yeah, I'm happy to do that. So a lot of these specs, many of these were things we had already really landed on, but some of these adjustments to specifications were actually modified based on feedback from you all. So at the top of this, I want everyone to understand, when you message in or email or comment to Negative Supply, even if it doesn't always get an immediate reply, we see it. It gets circulated in leadership meetings, and we really take that input into, true consideration. So, view the specifications at a glance, and good to note, these are still preliminary. Some things can change. The aperture range is f/0.95 to 256. One of the things I said last week was we were hoping to have support for people maybe doing pinhole exposures, and I'm happy to say you should have that. Shutter speed range from 30 minutes to 1/64,000th of a second. It's obviously an incredibly wide range, but we are very excited about that. And this is actually news to me on this extended ISO range. I didn't realize we were finalized to take it down that low.
It's all math.
Yeah, so ISO 0.1 to 12,800. And if Jason Lane is watching from J Lane Dry Plates, this is literally from an email you sent me the other day. Still working on some other features like you were asking for, but at the very least, hopefully we'll be able to reach those very low ISO standards. EV range from -5 to 23. Battery capacity, is that milliamps?
Yeah, milliamp hour.
Yeah, 400 milliamp hours.
At the minimum.
Yeah.
At the minimum. We're trying to really get the battery capacity up as high as possible. There's no reason not to put a bigger battery in there if it will fit. And with some of the changes we've made to the internal electronics, there's going to be more room for a bigger battery. So I guess that leads right into things like the
battery life projected. And again, it does vary by use case, but it's 2+ weeks. And the meter does have a sleep mode, potentially other features rolling out there in time. There's some other tech specs here that I'll let you read on the Kickstarter update, but beyond that, a few more high-flying things. Sensor types are lux, RGB, and sensitivity. Color temperature range from 1600 to 9900, so pretty wide. You already know about how compact and really small and pocketable it is. But another thing, and Saxon, I think you'll go into more detail on this, as we mentioned before, it does have a USB-C type connector. That's not just for charging. And I know you've talked about this a bit, but there are a couple questions that lead into more information there.
Yeah, I guess we're coming out and saying it now. I mean, we're building a device for people to use for years, but there might be some folks out there that want to take it a step further and possibly modify the software. We're building a device that we can give users a software update, but we can also release software for people to modify in the future. We're still working out the exact specifications for us to be qualified as true open source software or open source hardware. But it's something we want to work towards. We're writing in the Arduino programming language. That's almost locked in. We had looked at things like CircuitPython or some of the other languages that are out there. The Arduino programming language, it does so far everything that we need it to do, and it does it in a very easy to understand way. Again, we're going to talk a little bit more about how we're going to allow this device to be open source. But we think that there's an opportunity for people to build custom screens. There's an opportunity for people to add custom values that they might want to see instead. And then there's obviously an opportunity for people to do things with our device that we've never thought possible. What we want to do is we want to take a very community approach with it, though. We want to really get this out into the world with the software that's running as expected. We want to get it out into the world with a software update in the fall or early spring for things like the cinema mode. If we reach that stretch goal, but then we really want to start building that community aspect into this device. We want to work with some people that are both photographers and programmers and say, what would you like to do with this meter if you could do anything with it? And then really, put some of the best brains in the industry on this and let them work with it. That's not required for the long-term success of the meter. When you buy the meter, it's not required for the community to support it by any means, but we think this is an added value for those that want to go a little bit more deeply with some of the capabilities.
Definitely. And one more thing I meant to mention, for the people that were asking for flash sync capabilities, I know that's something I use on my meters from time to time. It is going to have a hardwired connection port with a TRS within a provided PC adapter, or at least that is our current projection. Again, keep watching for Kickstarter updates. As these stretch goals and other features evolve, we'll be sure to keep everyone apprised of that.
And I guess this is probably a great platform to talk about why we think we're going to go with TRS on the device versus something like a PC port. If you look at PC ports and you look at maybe the last couple of decades and why they've been used, it's typically been because it's just the industry standard. And that's a very good reason to continue using them. But at the same time, we know that PC ports aren't always the most durable. They're not always secure into the device, and it's becoming more and more difficult to source components for PC ports. For example, the physical plug that we would integrate into the device, it could be almost impossible to find one at the quantities that we're working with for PC. What we know about TRS, which for those of you that don't know, that's the equivalent of like the headphone jack style plug that's on the back of your Alien B or on the back of some of your other high-end flash systems. That particular plug is very universal. An audio cable could trigger your flashes if you needed it to. But it's much more secure. There's much more positive action when it plugs in so that it doesn't just pop out. But it also does a couple cool things for us too. The meter, the way it's going to trip a flash and the way that we've already done this in the past, and we'll talk about that in a second. The way it's going to trip a flash is with an optical switch on the inside. This electrically isolates the meter from your flash equipment, but it's essentially closing a circuit. That's all that the PC port does. That's all any of these devices do. When it closes that circuit, you have an interesting option. You could actually plug a camera's quick release cable into it. You could plug, like the Canon uses a standard 2.5 millimeter plug. If you plugged that into your camera and then you plugged it into our device, and let's say someone wrote software to turn our device into intervalometer. How do you say
Intervalometer.
that? Intervalometer. You could use the LM1 as an intervalometer, and you could actually capture photos at certain rates. These are some of the things that we're thinking about when we think long term about why we're going with certain plugs, why we're making our software open source. why we're going about things this way. It's because we know that there's more capabilities than just the surface level.
While this is all true, we also know that there are still some users out there, maybe who are absolutely have spent decades that are strongly accustomed to PC to PC connections. And that is why there will be a PC adapter shipping. That's the hope anyway. But I'm with Saxon entirely. I personally have been using Alien Bees for a decade now. And I think the TRS cable, definitely positive action is a term that I would absolutely agree with. I mean, the difference between a PC connection and TRS in that sense is night and day.
Well, it's kind of funny. Every phone out there is taking out the headphone jack.
Right.
We're essentially adding the headphone jack. It's not to listen to music. Don't get confused. But there are some very unique use cases for it. And I think long term, it's going to be the best solution for it.
Yeah, no, I'm really looking forward to this as well. But I also know I have like older Nikon shoe flashes that just have PC ports on them. So being able to use the PC adapter will be useful, but for studio strobes, that TRS outlet is going to be super helpful. So that's the spec sheet. Of course, if you have questions, as we've announced it, feel free to fire away. One question we've gotten from Joey at Awesome Cameras that I'm super excited to kind of answer now. We're going to be adding any more stretch goals. And
well, Joey, tell us what you want. I mean,
I think really in a nutshell, it's let's get past this one first. Let's really see where the cards fall. But the reality is there's a lot of different things we'd love to be able to do. It just comes down to support.
We're 25,000, a little over 25,000 right now from that stretch goal. We're looking to get our campaign to 200,000. I will say that if we do get to that point, the last stretch goal that I have in mind is very exciting. And that's all I'm going to say about it, because if I mention any more, it won't be a surprise.
Yeah. Let's get to 200 first. And once we do, we'll have a little party, post a few updates, and then share what's next. But certainly if you have friends who are in the cinema world, consider sharing this campaign with them, because I really believe this will be an integral tool for those people as well.
Yeah, and if you're on the fence about backing it and you just have questions, I went through and I answered every question or comment on our Kickstarter campaign this morning. So I'm caught up. Likely, if you ask something today, it'll get answered by the end of the week. There's, I guess, a good note I'll say it now and I'll say it at the end. There's a few more of the early bird brass meters. These are solid brass. They have a black paint coating. I think there's one actually on the other side of your laptop there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's a solid brass enclosure, and it has a black paint. We're going with a glossy color. There are, I think, a little over 25, maybe a little under 25 of those. Those are numbered, and so they'll have one of 100 or two of 100 or whatever the number is engraved onto them. After that, the price goes up for any of those. That's our last early bird option that's available.
And once those are gone, any other brass units will not be numbered. I think that's obvious, but this is a limited edition.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. So great. That's awesome. Do you want to, maybe we'll jump over to these questions, reel through a few of these and see what else comes in. So I think you already kind of leaned into this, but someone's asking if it will have compensate for green and magenta shift in color metering. Yeah.
I mean, as of right now, I don't see any technical reason why we can't have that. As an analog photographer, we typically think in terms of, tungsten or daylight balanced film. And so that's why we first and foremost want to launch with that as a feature. As we're working more and more with cinematographers and digital photographers, we know how important having those other measurements are. And so there's a good chance that gets added in, but we need to hear your interest. And so continue to reach out to us if that's something you're interested in. We'll do our best to add it if we hear enough about it. And there's a hierarchy to the features that we want to add. The more people that ask for something, the higher up on that list they go.
Yeah, definitely. So keep chiming in on Instagram and YouTube and Kickstarter. The next question you've really already answered as well. Further firmware updates, will they allow customers or backers to customize what features they use?
Yeah, so we want to think about how we're going to do this. We will likely offer a version of our firmware to the community and say, here's some firmware. If you load it onto the device and you brick the device, that's really tough. We'll try to support you through that, but this is really your thing now. That's for the customized firmware. That's for you getting to write your own code. But I actually think that there's going to be a lot of really unique use cases. You could change the font. Like I said, you could change the font to be bigger or smaller or italicized or Comic Sans. I mean, you could do whatever you want with that. Now, that's the user changeable software updates. What we're going to do, though, is we're going to launch official software updates for this, or firmware updates. This is just like you would do on like your Fujifilm cameras or your Canon or your Sonys. This is where we give you a file and say, upload this. We've tested it thoroughly. It's going to work. It adds these features. So I don't want anybody to get confused. We have two things when we're talking about software updates. We have ones that we might let other people customize, and that's their thing. And then we have ones that we're going to officially release, and that's going to be our thing, and they're going to be tested. That's where cinema mode's going to come from, things like that.
And one thing that I would say as well, more than likely, there's going to be two different ways that you would get those updates. Most likely, we'll probably, I guess we would ask if you'd want it this way, but we'd probably do an email blast to customers with the LM1 and let you know that there is new software available. Essentially, our closest way of sending you a push notification about it. But there'll probably also be a web page on the website where you can actually go and accept these files. If you're like me and you're bad about updating, hopefully we'll be able to give you the option to go back and take care of that later. That is.
Yeah, we'll make it available.
And really what Saxon's getting at here, and this is something that particularly excites me really for the future of negative supply and really our place in this industry, is that we're creating a tool that will have years of support, very high level technical support, and really kind of seems somewhat limitless what you can do with software updates. So I'm excited about that. Another question we received is, will it have a foot candle readout?
I don't see why not. I mean, not right now. That's not something that we've got in version 1 of the software. But again, just like the other stuff, if there's a value like lux or foot candle that you want to see, let us know. Actually, on our prototypes currently, we have an option to switch the EV number to lux. So if we have a button we can press, and instead of showing EV at the top left, it'll show lux. That's just in our prototypes, but it's already there. The capability's there. It's just about making, I guess, space in a menu to add those options if enough people ask for it.
Yeah, and Saxon just hinted at something really important to me. As we continue to add modes and features, it's very important, because the screen is fairly small, since the meter is small, that the menuing that goes into how all this is laid out is really methodical and well planned and well executed. That's very top of mind for Saxon, myself, the rest of the team, internally and externally at Negative Supply, that are working on this project. And I'll be excited to see how that develops.
Yeah, we're definitely thinking along the lines of like hardware shortcuts when possible versus like deep dives into menus. We know that that's a lot more user friendly in the field. It's just
better user experience.
Yeah, it's a much better user experience.
Awesome. So one of the last questions I have submitted here is really just folks looking for maybe further details or a little bit of a scoop on other tools and features we might make available through firmware. You've already really been leaning into that, but are there any others you think of that you might be willing to kind of peel the curtain back a bit? Or
yeah, I mean, so we've talked about cinema mode. That's our stretch goal. That's like an official, like we would love to do this. Like we've already got plans in motion for it. If you haven't seen our Kickstarter update, go to the Kickstarter page, click updates, and look. We've even got a preview of what the screen would look like. So do that. Other one that I've already hinted at would be like turning your meter into an intervalometer.
Yeah.
Always something I have a hard time saying. Or turning your meter into something that can read alternate values like foot candle or lux.
And then I also think of, well, I don't know how easy this would be to do, but we've had lots of people reaching out in the alternative process world, asking for certain features and support. I'm still researching those things, but I don't know, maybe there's support that could be offered that way as well.
Yeah, and then I guess we can leave it there. I mean, there's a lot of opportunity for us to make promises here that we want to get a little further along before we do. But
well, I think the big thing here is to say, as Saxon has said, and I've maintained as well through this campaign, if there's a feature you're looking for or support that you need in your practice as a creative, we'd love to hear about it. And there's a number of ways you can reach out to us to find out about that, or to let us know what you'd like for us to add.
Do you have any questions, Diego?
Someone's asking, we will have the ability to do more readings.
I actually think that's a good one for us to keep in mind. It's come up.
It's a popular feature on spot meters to evaluate shadows and highlights. I would absolutely say that's something we need to look into.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We'll add it to our feature list. We want to hear though, if that's something you want, please comment on our campaign.
Yeah.
Send us a message. We may not get to reply to every single message with some long drawn out response, but definitely we'll take note of it.
Yeah, and exactly. It's like, a friend emailed me the other day, several paragraphs, and I took note of it, passed it on, and that's why the ISO range is what it is now. But I didn't have the time to send back a huge response. And for those who didn't hear the question from Diego, can you actually repeat that one more time? Because I'm not sure if you really got it into the mic.
Will it have the ability to take 2 or more readings than get an average?
Yeah, so basically like evaluating shadows and highlights and averaging them into 1 meter reading. We're definitely going to take note of that. But if that's something you want, chime in, speak up, and we'll see what we can do.
Any more questions, Diego? I've got, I think, one thing I'd like to close on. Where are we at on time? We've got just 2 or 3 more minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Do we want to take this as like an informal opportunity to introduce the app?
Yeah, I think that'd be good.
You guys are literally some of the first people to hear about this outside of a little Easter egg we dropped on one of the Kickstarter updates. But Negative Supply has an app. It's available on the iOS store. It'll be coming to the Android store soon. That app's already built. We're just working on finalizing a few details with it. But if you're on an iPad or an iPhone, you can actually go to the App Store and type in Negative Supply. You'll find an app. This app has really a couple things that we think are really important. The top 3 for me are, number 1, it has a scanning backlight. When you click scanning backlight, it actually turns the brightness up on your device all the way. It keeps your device from going to sleep, and it gives you a resizable mask. You can place this under your film carrier. You can place this under like our basic carrier, or if you have an iPad, you can place it under something like our 4x5 carrier, but it provides you with the light source to scan your film. It's not the highest ISO, the highest CRI. It's not the brightest, but we know that for a lot of people, especially people doing black and white, this is actually a really good first step towards scanning. My first light source when I started scanning my film was an iPad that I just...
Oh, that's what we demoed with for months.
Just take a white screen, turn it all the way up. But we've created an app that does that for you now. So that's feature number 1. Feature number 2 is it actually includes information about our products, quick links to things like assembly guides, support. I think that's been something people have asked for a while. But essentially, you've got like a one-stop shop to go, oh, I need to contact Negative Supply. Where's that link? You've got it. I need to reach out to Negative Supply in regards to like maybe a future purchase I'm looking to make. Well, you've got a link to Concierge. So you can actually schedule a call with someone from our team, like AJ, and he'll talk you through your needs. And finally, the third feature I really like is it's actually got a discount code right now. This is not going to be forever, but right now, if you download the app and want to buy something from Negative Supply, there's a 10% discount code. Discount codes are great. They obviously provide you guys with some financial incentive. What we want to know, though, is we want to know that you're using the app. And so by including a discount code, it shows us that you guys have downloaded and used the app. The app is completely free. There's no cost for it at all. If you want to use that discount code for a future purchase, go for it. We don't have an expiration date on that code yet. Likely it won't last too long. We just want a temperature gauge for the interaction with the app.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And if you're on our email newsletter, you'll be receiving an update today about the app, also letting you know about our weekly drop this week on our online store. So certainly if there's a Negative Supply item you've been eyeing, whether you use the Kickstarter code or the code from the app, we would absolutely encourage you to place that order soon. Inventory levels are low. We've had a ton of demand the past 2 weeks, and it's been a really exciting time to get all these orders out as quickly as we've been able to.
Yeah, the big thing is our weekly drops don't last as long right now with all of the folks that are coming to us that are new from Kickstarter. So things are selling out a little bit more quickly than usual. We're a growing business, so we're trying to keep things in stock, but it's definitely something that we have to work towards each and every week. We get to the end of the week, we put on the store what we've got available, and that's it for usually a couple days. I think it's usually about once a week we add more inventory. So I guess that's it. Let's recap.
Yep.
We've talked about the cinema mode and the fact that that's a stretch goal. Once we hit 200,000, that will be a firmware update released late fall or I guess early spring,
It's
likely.
probably going to be early spring.
So we're talking like January, February of 2022. That's cinema mode. It'll have quite a few features that you guys have asked for. Go to the Kickstarter update to see a little bit more information about it, including a screenshot. Second thing was the full spec sheet. That same Kickstarter update includes the spec sheet for the LM1. So a lot of the preliminary specifications that you guys were asking for. It took us a few days to get it together, but I think you'll be really happy with it. It includes information about user serviceable batteries, types of connections, and then some of the exposure ranges. And then we've also talked a little bit about some of the questions that were brought up. So maybe back up a few minutes if you've missed out on that. Again, this will be on YouTube, uploaded as a video. So you can actually go back and watch this in its entirety. If you're joining us from Instagram Live, YouTube's probably the best way to rewatch it. You'll get the full experience. And then lastly, we've talked about the negative supply app. The negative supply app is something that's actually been in the works now for, God, I think 6 months or more.
Yeah, it's been a while.
We worked to understand exactly the requirements to make what we wanted to happen. And we kind of put together a few heads in the industry and asked for support with that. But what we're really trying to do with the negative supply app is lower that barrier of entry. If you're someone that's not scanned with a camera before and you'd like to start, you can purchase our basic film carrier for 35 millimeter. It's $99. You can use the app as the backlight, and you can use a tripod or basic riser to hold your camera. But you're going to get scans. I mean, you're going to be able to scan your film in like 2 minutes. 2 minutes for 35 millimeter, 5 minutes if you're a little slower. But it is definitely life-changing if you're coming from like an Epson or something else like
You're
that.
talking about with the basic carrier?
Yeah, with
primarily.
the basic carrier.
And if you haven't heard about the basic film carrier 35, here on our YouTube channel, we have either 2 or 3 videos about it. More content coming, but you'll get to hear more from me and the rest of the negative supply team about that device in use.
Cool.
Anything else?
I think we're going to be back possibly next week with another live. Next week's might go a little technical. I think we're going to have a lot of our technical questions answered, and we're going to have a lot of things locked in. So if you're someone who's technical in nature and want to join that, please do. It'll definitely focus around programming languages and hardware that we're integrating into this. I think that'll be exciting for people that think that stuff's exciting. I'm sure we'll have some other like actual Kickstarter related things to talk about too.
Hopefully by that point, we're talking about what's next for the campaign, because we'll be past the $200,000 stretch goal with any luck. So
yeah, we'll see. Love the screen.
Yeah, that's a great color.
All right.
Thanks so much for joining us this week. Saxon and the rest of the team will have updates up about the next live for you to tune into. We'll see you then.